Shooting it raw?
Yes. Shooting it raw. The man delivers. Boom. Okay, so this photo, what? Oh man, this is like childhood. You're pushing all the right buttons. Okay, so the photo is called Test Pilot. In it is an F-16 Falcon.
Yep.
Which I know. It's shot by another sort of accompanying plane, jet. That's, who's photographing. Please you're not going to tell me that you're in the cockpit, are you?
I am. That's me.
Oh, dude, no, man, you can't be serious. Oh,
yeah.
Okay. Total crush happening. Okay. So there is this jet, F-16 flying in it. I don't know if it's is that single or a double? Is that a solo or are you with a two-person?
Yeah, that's a single seater. So that's an F-16C.
Yeah. Okay. Look, it's over the desert. It looks like the desert or something. You're probably at like, I don't know, I'll say 30,000 feet because why not?
Yeah.
Probably, let's say 4 kilometers up in the air, whatever that is. In the back of the plane is a funny looking rig that I have no idea what it is. It's not what you normally see on the back of a jet, but man, like what is this, Pat? What is this?
All right, so this was me in my my first professional career. I was a pilot in the U.S. Air Force, and eventually I got to go through test pilot school, and then there I am flying things like this. And one of the really amazing things we got to do was spin testing. We would deliberately go up and put the airplane out of control because before you send an airplane out to the fleet with any new modification, you want to know how it's going to behave. And if the modification is bad and makes it more dangerous for the pilots to fly, then they need to know about that and adjust their behavior accordingly. So that thing you see on the back, that rig, that is a spin chute. And it's this big 10-meter diameter chute that is fired by a mortar shell out behind you if you get into a situation where you can't recover the aircraft. And so you're flying along in the cockpit, and you've got this, no kidding, a big red button right in front of you. And if things go bad, you punch the big red button and hope that it solves the problem.
Right, it brings you that stability. Yeah.
Yeah. And this was over Edwards Air Force Base out in Southern California.
Oh, Pat, what? Okay, so, in the population of human beings, let's say there's, I don't know, 10,000, 20,000 people who have been in an F-16, who have flown these amazing aircraft. You're one of them. And if you have seen what my eyes have seen, like, oh man, like that, astounding. And so the one of the pillars of the podcast is, life is a gift, and how do we make every second count?
It is.
How did you end up I can only imagine how many classified and unclassified stories you could tell us. But like, what is the kernel, this at the core of that thing that led you to flying this unbelievable machine?
Okay, I always wanted to be an astronaut, and so as a kid, I found out that most astronauts started their professional careers as test pilots, and that most test pilots had started their careers as fighter pilots. And then how do you get to become a fighter pilot? And so I picked what I wanted to do, and then I tried to back up everything to get onto the path where I could do it. And so even in high school, I applied for the United States Air Force Academy. So I went there, And then I went to pilot training in Lubbock, Texas, where I met my lovely wife. And then I went and I flew F4s over in the Philippines. And
Oh, wow.
that got us our first trip to Hong Kong,
Mm-hmm.
which was prior to the transition. And I imagine it's a
Oh,
much
okay.
different place
Yeah.
now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so then when we came back to that, from that, I got selected for test pilot school. The school itself is a year long, but the payoff is huge. You,
Well, yeah.
yeah, you get to do this kind of stuff.
Oh, man. Wow, Pat, like astounding. Okay, so you're okay, so this is what screams out to me is that part of your education and development involved this idea of strategic thinking,
Uh-huh.
right? That something about your parents modeling for you or guiding you or something, some lesson in life said to you, if you want to get to X, you have to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? So you knew you wanted to get to that one goal, and so you lined up all these things starting from when you're like a teen.
Yeah.
What did your parents show you? What is that?
I think the biggest thing they showed me, and I absolutely positively love my parents. And I think the biggest gift they gave me, beyond life, was the gift of reading and the love
Mm.
of reading, because
Mm-hmm.
that opens so many more worlds to you, so many more possibilities and universes. And so from a very young age, I might ask for a bike or I might want cowboy boots or something.
Mm.
And often that answer was no. But if I wanted to go to the library, that answer was almost always yes. And
Mm.
if I wanted a book, that answer was almost always yes.
Mm.
So, yeah, they gave me the gift of a love of reading, and I think that is what drove me to learn more and more because I discovered the early masters of science fiction, Asimov, Heinlein, and Clarke, and
Yeah.
they just really, really opened my perception to what was possible in life, even if it wasn't possible yet.
Okay. With the first Falcon, I said, let's go back to that moment. So look at this photograph. As you're speaking, giving me this life lesson, let's go back to that day. Do you remember that particular flight? Or is that it just kind of always had that rig on the back and this particular flight
No.
doesn't really stand out because there's so many of them?
Yeah, there's plenty of flights, but this aircraft, the tail number 120, was used primarily for engine testing. So I spent a lot of time in
Mm-hmm.
that
Okay.
aircraft testing new engines. So
Oh, wow.
a lot of time going up and deliberately shutting down the only engine on my airplane and
Oh,
trying to get
wow.
it restarted. So this was a little unusual when we put the spin chute on it and started using it for what we called performance and flying qualities testing and high angle of attack testing. So I don't remember the particulars of this flight, but it was always okay. What if you have an asymmetric load? What if you have, we've got a couple of missiles on the left wing,
Yeah.
and it looks like maybe a Maverick air to ground missile inboard of that.
Yeah.
And one of the things that always comes up is, an airplane like this, you generally launch one weapon at a time or deploy one weapon at a time. So
Mm.
even if you're loaded symmetrically at takeoff, you're going to end up
Yeah.
being asymmetric,
Asymmetric. Yeah.
yeah, somewhere in the flight. So this particular flight, I don't remember if it was this very flight or if it was another one during the program. But this was one of the scariest things that ever happened
Oh,
to me.
okay.
because we would do inverted departure testing. And so for this, you would go up to about 40,000 feet, you would roll upside down, and then you would push forward so that you would be as close to -1 G as possible. And then you would slam the stick all the way one way and stomp on the rudder all the way, and you would intentionally put the airplane out of control. And
wow.
So there I am. And in the F-16, it's like being on the front of an airplane. You don't really see the wings or anything else. You feel almost like Superman out there.
You're super high as well.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. And so, the airplane goes out of control just as planned. And I'm trying to do my recovery techniques, doing the appropriate switches, the appropriate movements of the stick and the rudders, and all of this. All I'm seeing is blue sky.
Oh wow, yeah.
Because I'm upside down on my back, and I can't really tell which way I'm rotating, and it's important to know that because we've got this little extended flight test nose boom, and had I been aware enough at the time to really pay attention to that, it would have solved my problems. But it takes me a while, and it's not coming out of the spin. And so finally, I get it to where the aircraft is going nose to earth, and then the nose just keeps coming back up again. So now I'm right side up, but I'm out of control, but this time I'm right side up. And then it was like the world reoriented around me. I could see the ground. I could see which way I was turning, and I recovered. But I had a few moments there where I thought, oh my God, I'm going to have to do the walk of shame. I'm going to have to punch the big red button.
Right.
And then explain why there's some spin chute landing over, California City, California. And so it's always better to leave with all the stuff you had on board when you took off. So,
Pat, you've just you deliver. Oh man, this is crazy. This is amazing. I'm awestruck by the opportunity and the amazement, because for me, like for you, it's discrete moments and decision moments that say, okay, I have to do this now, and then I have to do that, and you get there. Kind of like when speaking to a famous singer or whatever, we notice the result, and that's what I'm looking at now, and not necessarily the work of getting there.
Yeah,
which of course up and down and up and down. So, what was a quick story of a time on that journey where you fell on your face?
Oh, there are probably several.
Because failures are as much a part of success. Like falling back a few steps is as much a part of growing. So
yeah.
So is there one lesson that really stands out that you said, well, that really taught me, don't go that direction?
Yeah. And I think it was in the same airplane, we were doing a thing called loads testing, which is you have a specific things loaded on the airplane, stores, weapons, missiles, and you have to hit exact altitudes and airspeeds. And then you have this fairly complicated maneuver that you do where you roll to 90 degrees, you pull, then you bank again, you put rudder doublets in, and it was so complicated that generally they had that testing done at a different place, at Eglin Air Force Base in Florida, because that was something those guys did all the time. And so they got very good at it. But for whatever reason, we're going to do it at Edwards with this load. And I remember that day we were doing a lot of supersonic test points. And so that was a lot of go really fast, do the maneuver, and then have the control room say, yeah, we need to do that again. So I would have to go hit the tanker, air refuel, go back, do it all again. And, depending on the kind of flight, There have been flights where I've accomplished 100 test points. On this particular flight, I only even attempted 13. And on the 13th, I managed to both overspeed and over-G the aircraft. And it was all because I goofed up my switches in the cockpit. I didn't have things set up correctly. And then the overspeeding thing was always surprising to me. And I've used this as an example of a thing called attentional blindness since then. But in the heads-up display that you're looking through, you have Mach number, and right below it is G's, the load factor you're putting on the aircraft. And two things happened. One was I wasn't paying attention to the fact that at some point the airplane becomes limited by airspeed rather than Mach number, which is a little bit different and not something we need to spend a lot of time on. But the point is I gooned that up. And I was 20 knots faster than I should have been, 20 knots beyond the design limit of the aircraft.
Wow.
Yeah.
Which doesn't sound like much to me. Like to an outsider, 20, it's like, okay, so you're going 140 instead of 120. Okay. But what does that mean in relative terms? Like just 20 knots, like was that really pushing the limit?
Yeah, it was going beyond the limit. In fact, the cardinal sin among test pilots is to break a limit. And if the airspeed limit, like on the F-16, was 800 knots, you were allowed to do a test point from 780 to 800. You were not ever to get to 801 because bad things can happen. The smart guys that design the airplanes design them for that to be the worst case, and if you start going beyond the worst case, so I overspeed the airplane, and then when I roll into my turn and I pull full aft on the stick, I'm suddenly losing all sorts of airspeed, and I knew the maneuver was not going to be good.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, and just because it didn't feel right, and I come out of it and recover, and talking to the control room, and they say, yeah, we're going to need to do that again. And that's when I finally noticed that on a maneuver where I was not supposed to exceed 5 Gs, I had gotten to 7.9. And even more than the speed, how many Gs you're pulling can kill you.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so we knocked it off. I came back, I landed, and then you have the really uncomfortable meeting with your boss.
Yeah.
And he calls me in, and we have this really collegial conversation about, what did you learn?
And you fucked up, brother.
Yeah, absolutely. And he could have set me down. He could have said, no, you need to think about this a while, and you have to go on the tour of shame or something.
Right.
But what he asked me to do was he asked me to talk to all the other F-16 test pilots and tell them about my path to that mistake. And it was a little cathartic, but it was also a little embarrassing at the same time.
But everybody learns, right?
Yeah.
That's how you all learn.
Yep.
Yeah. So one of the, my client for the past 15 years was a guy who helped co-found DHL International in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
And so DHL, for the people who know the company, do really incredible things.
Yeah.
And one of the things in their culture, in terms of service leadership and what I sort of teach professionally, is this idea that anybody can make a mistake, right? Anybody can make a mistake so long as you talk about it.
Yeah.
So long as everybody learns together. So when you're telling me this, I mean, your boss had a good idea, good inkling of, okay, well, you screwed up. Now you have to tell everybody so you can all sort of laugh about it around the, the cooler, and then go, okay, let's move on.
Yep. And I love that philosophy that when you mess up, you should fess up.
Yep.
Because that way everybody gets better.
For sure. Let's move on to the next photo, shall we?
Okay.
Okay, I can't even imagine what I'm going to get. So, is life really a gift? Really? Can you make every second count? That's the whole point of the podcast. So, if you like what you've seen and you're inspired, because that really is my mission, then please give it a like, subscribe, and share.
Shooting it raw?
Yes, shooting it raw.